My forwarding of a post is like breathing out carbon dioxide. You cannot sentence me to life imprisonment for global warming. Wow, okay, that incredible quote comes straight from Dr. Chen Jingyuan, and it perfectly sets up today's explainer. We're looking at a wildly fascinating true story here, a legal defense that wasn't built on standard alibis, but literally entirely around the hard sciences of personality psychology and the physics of causality. Welcome back to the explainer. So, picture this. Dr. Chen is facing a serious charge, causing public order disruption, all for just forwarding an online post. But instead of begging for leniency or using a traditional legal plea, he did something completely unexpected. He bypassed all of that and mounted a defense using the laws of complex physics and the fundamental structures of human psychology. We're going to neutrally break down exactly what his source documents tell us, just to see how this unbelievable defense was actually built. Okay, let's dive right into our roadmap. We're looking at 1, the science of legal defense, 2, a clash of personalities, 3, the network physics of chaos, 4, breaking the causal chain, and 5, law in a complex world. Part 1, the science of legal defense. So Dr. Chen gets hit with a charge that essentially boils down to picking quarrels and provoking trouble. The prosecution's angle, they argued that him forwarding a sensitive post online actively caused a disruption of public order. Now, typically, a defendant here might just argue, I didn't know the post was false, or maybe just ask for leniency. But Dr. Chen, he did something entirely different. He pointed out a massive, profound mismatch. Basically, he argued that the legal system was trying to use these oversimplified, totally rigid, linear rules to judge what is actually an inherently complex, nonlinear reality. He literally brought in multidisciplinary sciences to prove that what the prosecution claimed happened was scientifically speaking impossible. Part 2, a clash of personalities. The source documents actually start by analyzing this full case through the lens of personality psychology, which is fascinating. On one side of the ring, you've got Dr. Chen's personality, high openness, high autonomy, and this deep need to view things from multiple perspectives. And then, on the other side, you have the judicial system's institutional personality, low openness, high compliance, and a strict reliance on binary black and white rules. I mean, the psychological mismatch here is just massive. The system inherently demands submission, right? It interprets his independent academic questioning as just straight up antagonistic. So Dr. Chen's totally natural, autonomous pursuit of logic gets fundamentally misread by this institutional framework as intentional disruption. Looking a bit closer at Dr. Chen's psychological profile using the Big Five and Hexaco models, he scores incredibly high on openness to experience and intellect. He's totally fine with ambiguity. He actively seeks out complex truths. But the real picker here is his high honesty humility. In the Hexaco model, scoring high here means a person literally has a profound psychological inability to be fake, or to just say things they know to be untrue just to appease authority. This is absolutely critical to the story. He scientifically could not confess to something his brain knew was demonstrably false. Plus, he had extremely low neuroticism, meaning under pressure he didn't panic. He just analyzed. And this leads us to a pretty tragic but super fascinating realization. The system can only really understand a compliant personality. It completely fails to comprehend an autonomous personality. Why does this matter? Because the legal system looked at Dr. Chen's highly integrated, mature personality, a mind that's just wired to seek truth and logic, and they just saw stubbornness. They interpreted his scientific precision as a refusal to cooperate. They totally missed the fact that his very personality structure made it physically impossible for him to just accept a simplified, illogical narrative. Part 3, the network physics of chaos. Now, what's really interesting about this next part is how the defense applied hard computer science to the law, specifically using the CAP theorem to explain the physical reality of the internet. The theorem states that in any distributed system, like a massive social media network, you cannot simultaneously have perfect consistency, availability, and partition tolerance. You always have to sacrifice one, period. Because social networks obviously have to stay online, that's availability, and they have to survive network splits, partition tolerance, they mathematically cannot have perfect consistency. So what does this mean for Dr. Chen's trial? It means that localized disorder or mismatched information on social media is just a systemic norm. It's literally a mathematical feature of the platform, not a crime committed by a user. Absolute global order is technically impossible. Building right on top of that, Dr. Chen introduced the court to the concept of a scale-free network. Essentially, this is a network where a tiny, tiny minority of hub nodes, think massive influencers, celebrities, or state media, hold almost all the connections and influence. Meanwhile, the vast majority of normal users are just peripheral nodes. Their actual reach is statistically close to zero. And Dr. Chen proved to the court that his account, which had fewer than 100 followers, was the very definition of a microscopic peripheral node. The mechanics here are pretty straightforward when you think about it. The hub nodes drive the macro trends, while peripheral nodes, like Dr. Chen, have statistically zero impact on the overall flow of information. Because of this architecture, the system is incredibly robust to any disturbances caused by those peripheral nodes. I mean, if an account with under 100 followers forwards a post, that action is immediately just swallowed up by the background noise of billions of other interactions. It does not, and actually cannot, change the direction of the macro system. But to prove this wasn't just some abstract theory, he brought in the math, specifically the Cohen critical threshold formula. Let's de-jargonize this for a second. Basically, this formula measures network robustness. It mathematically proves that in a scale-free network, you could remove almost 100% of all the peripheral nodes, and the network itself wouldn't even flinch. It wouldn't collapse. The core structure stays perfectly intact. Therefore, the random activity of a single peripheral node, like one guy forwarding one post, completely lacks some mathematical energy to trigger some massive social order collapse. Like he said, it's like throwing a pebble into a hurricane and then blaming the pebble for the direction of the wind. Part 4. Breaking the causal chain. So when we stack these two arguments side by side, a really clear divide emerges. The legal claim relies entirely on strict causality, saying that forwarding the post caused public chaos and that the user fully intended this disruption. But the scientific reality points out that network physics proves the system is inherently nonlinear. It's actually somewhat chaotic by design, thanks to the CAP theorem. And more importantly, a peripheral node completely lacks the causal power to create a system-wide disruption. Criminal law absolutely requires a direct, undeniable chain of cause and effect. Dr. Chen literally used physics to prove that this chain was physically broken. The absolute most crucial takeaway here is this. A microscopic node cannot mathematically trigger a macro system phase change, period. The prosecution was committing what scientists call a category error. They were looking at a wildly complex dynamic system and trying to apply mechanical A causes B logic to it. Dr. Chen wasn't just sitting there saying, I didn't do it. He was saying, the thing you are accusing me of doing is actually contrary to the laws of physics. Part 5. Law in a complex world. Ultimately, this whole case highlights a massive, massive friction point in modern society. We are currently operating with what you could call Newtonian legal systems. These are frameworks built centuries ago, completely based on linear cause and effect. A hits B, B falls over. Simple, mechanical. But today, we are living in quantum social realities. The internet is this sprawling place of emergent phenomena, nonlinear chaos, and highly distributed responsibility. Our laws are simply not equipped yet to accurately map onto the complex systems that we interact with every single day. And that brings us to our final thought for today. When a legal system relies on strict, linear rules, how can it ever fairly judge a nonlinear world? Dr. Chen Jingyuan's defense was this brilliantly structured interdisciplinary argument. It completely refused to let complex reality be flattened by simple bureaucratic language. And honestly, it forces all of us to ask whether our institutions are even capable of understanding the science of the modern world, or if they're just going to keep trying to punish the pebbles for the storm. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive. Think about that question for a bit, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.